Purpose is doing is being very, very devious. It's sucking people into courses where it's giving them an education to impose this new ideology on them. And we know how it is being done, and I really would ask listeners to go away and research this for themselves. The way they are doing it is to use NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. This is a form, technically it's a form of hypnosis, but these are very, very, very sophisticated techniques of messing around with people's minds. And although NLP can be used to help people, it can be used in therapeutic ways, what we are seeing is NLP being used to promote a very dangerous political agenda, and it's being used to change people's views and values without them actually being aware of it. Now, if you say to me, how bad has it got, I'm going to be able to say with total confidence, because the UK column has published this stuff in detail, we've now got common purpose embedded at the highest level of government. One of Cameron's ministers who's helping promote it is Oliver Letwin, who I'll say just happens to be an ex-MN Rothschild man. But we've got Common Purpose, which is a political charity. I know that I've already said earlier that it's not possible to be political, but I'm sure they are. They are now bedded straight into the government cabinet office, and they have been put under contract to help set up behavioural change units in every government department. Now, this is not fantasy, this is fact. We've got the documents, we know the names, we know when the meetings took place. So in the UK at the moment, every key government department has a cell which is tasked, first of all, with changing the views and values and behaviour of the government department people. And when they've achieved that, the departments are going to use the same effect on us to change our views and values in society. Now, the government's own documents, and I'll quote one of them, which is called Mindspace. Mindspace, you can find it on Google. In that document, it actually admits that the psychological processes they're using, the NLP they're using, can change our views and values and beliefs. We may not even know that those things have been changed. These modern applied psychology tools are so powerful, we can have our views changed. We're not even aware the views changed. Alternatively, we might realise we're changed, we're doing different things, but we don't know how it was done to us. Now, that's not Brian Gerrish telling the audience that. That has come straight out of government documents. So let's start to put this together. We've got in Britain, and the same thing's happening in America, we have international criminals who have now wormed their way. We've been stupid enough to elect them, but they're now in positions of power in government. They're linked to arms dealers. They're calling for wars throughout the world. And these people are prepared to use applied psychology on their own citizens in order to get their agenda through. This is very, very dangerous stuff, and we've got to take the lid off it.
And I mean, NLP, which you were talking about before, goes right to the heart of what you just said. It's about manipulating behaviour. It's about certain phrases and emphasis on words. And this is used in advertising, it's used in speeches, it's used in politics. And it's about trying to get people to do what you want them to do, get them to think what you want them to think by the words that you use. I mean, it's sold as a self-help tool, and I'm sure a lot of people do use it for that, but it's been hijacked and it's now being used for nefarious ends. Just as
Paul, sorry to
go ahead.
But if I may, because I'm watching the time, something I'd like to bring to the attention of the American audience is that in South Wales, being obviously part of the United Kingdom, over the last 2 years, teenagers, very young teenagers, and young people committing suicide. It's been going on for 2 years. The suicides are still continuing. And what is so terrible is these are children aged 14, 15, 16, and up through to sort of young 20s. And the method of suicide is that they are all hanging themselves. Now, this is not a very nice topic, but we're in very dangerous times at the moment. When we look at the suicides and we see they're all hanging themselves, this is unusual, because the facts are, statistically, that boys normally hang themselves or men hang themselves, whereas girls and women take drugs and maybe cut their wrists. But these people are all hanging themselves. Now, at the moment, the British government has put a media clampdown on these suicides because they do not want people in Britain to realise that something very, very nasty is happening with young people. But when we dig into what is actually happening in this area of South Wales, we find there is a massive infiltration of not only Common Purpose, but other organisations which are using applied NLP within the school system. Now, I can speak with confidence on this because we actually now have NLP trainers, people who are professional trainers in NLP. They have come forward to us to give us information because they are absolutely horrified that what they regard as a therapeutic skill is being unleashed on children in a political sense. Now, what one of these professional NLP people explained to me, and I think it's a very, very good analogy, if you buy yourself a new computer, and it's a very fast machine and you're very pleased with it, this is like the human brain. It's working well. And then you add a program, and everything's fine, and you add a few more programs, and then you fancy a game, and you add a couple of computer games. And after you've added so many things into your computer, eventually you get the odd problem. It freezes or it stops. And if you really overload it with lots of little screensavers and games and programs, eventually you can have major problems with your computer until you get it cleaned out. Now, what the NLP trainer explained to me is that if you start to put in NLP clips, NLP programs, into the minds of children and young people, you do a bit in this lesson, a bit in that lesson, a bit in next year's lesson, eventually you get problems. And his view, and I think he's absolutely correct, is that we are now starting to see the political pushing of applied behavioural psychology. This is now starting to result in our young people committing suicide. This is very dangerous stuff, and exactly the same processes are being used in American schools.
And it's interesting you touch upon that subject because a couple of weeks ago I wrote an article about Demos, which of course is the think tank of which Cameron regularly gives speeches, so did Tony Blair, founded by Marxist Julia Middleton, who of course is majorly involved with Common Purpose, sits on their board. And there was a story recently about Demos sending their agents out to schools to basically train them how to judge sources. And of course, anything designated as a, quote, conspiracy theory, anything that disagrees with the official orthodoxy, was denigrated and rubbished. So they're actually sending out Demos people to train school children to dismiss anything that goes against the government line. And we actually had one of the Demos employees on the Alex Jones Nightly News after, and of course he denied everything. From my perspective, it seemed like he was just working at the lower level. He's got no idea what the overall organisation is about, although he did admit that Demos is funded by the British government. So of course that's going to have an influence on what they're allowed to do and what kind of programs they're allowed to bring to schools and introduce to the curriculum. Yep. But one more thing, Brian, and we've got a few minutes before we end here. Yeah. It's interesting that we did an article on these Common Purpose promo videos which were on YouTube a couple of years ago. Really downright creepy stuff. They had shots they were talking about Common Purpose, then they cut to shots of people involved in the program, wide-eyed, looked completely drugged out of their gourds, looked like they were brainwashed. I wrote an article saying, look at this is weird, this is creepy. Lo and behold, the YouTube account related to these videos has now been deleted. So they seem, Common Purpose had a thing on their website recently saying, attacking you, basically saying what you say is all rubbish. But it's very interesting when you point out these things, they seem to get very nervous and start to remove material. Is that the case from what your experience?
Yeah, that is absolutely correct. But let's look at this on a positive side. If these people have nothing to hide, they should be very proud of all their material up. The fact that when you lift the stone, you shine the spotlight on them, they start to backtrack, instantly tells you they're up to no good. So I'm delighted when stuff gets taken down, because what the government is doing for free is telling us that we're beginning to look in the right areas. We're beginning to look in the right direction. And just to come back to Demos very quickly, I'm really glad that you mentioned Demos is a Marxist organisation, and it is right next to the British government. It's a policy creation think tank. It has advised Labour, it's advised the Liberal Democrats, and now it's interwoven into the so-called Conservative government. And yes, you're absolutely right, Julia Middleton linked to Demos. So everywhere we now turn, where the country, Britain and America, is being ripped apart, it's being done because the Marxist ideology has been let loose inside the country. Well, we've got very, very brave American men and women serving their country in the American armed forces, and they think they're out there on the front line defending their country. What is actually going on is that the Marxists have put their people in power straight into Congress, straight into the Senate, and in Britain straight into Westminster. We know who these people are. In Britain we certainly know who they are, and all we've got to do is remove them. Is it possible? I'm going to say it's going to start to happen very quickly, and the beauty of it is that initially I think things will get a little bit ugly, but the longer we keep it peaceful, the faster the truth comes out, and the quicker these people start running. You only had to see the fear on Liam Fox's face when he started to be exposed in the press. So if you want to know how to hurt these people, how to get rid of them, you've got to name them. You've got to get you've got to get their photographs into the media, onto the internet, and we've got to name them for what they are. They are dangerous criminals. They're Marxists. Many of them are child abusers, certainly in the British political circles, and we need to expose them for what they really are. If we do that, we can overcome what's happening.
And just to conclude, Brian, give people the websites, tell them how they can get involved with the British Constitution Group, UK Column, etc. Okay.
Well, the UK Column is a newspaper, is a voluntary newspaper, but we're reporting on what's happening in the country, and we're analysing it, and that is simply www.ukcolumn, that's COLUMN, www.ukcolumn.org, O-R-G. The British Constitution Group, which is showing how our common law and constitution is being undermined, is www.thebcgroup, all one word, thebcgroup.org.uk. And if you go to either of those sites, you'll start to see what we're about. And if you're interested in Common Purpose, I have another site which is called cpexposed.com,